Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk a bit about the Rega Elas. The ones you see here are my Mark 1.25s, and I've also owned a pair of Mark 2 XELs. The Ela was manufactured in England and officially debuted in 1990, although there were a few early releases in 1989. Its design was an angled baffle quarter-wave transmission line, providing it with good projection and smooth bass response, and its narrow front baffle lent itself to the speakers having excellent imaging. The Mark I had a fully fluted cabinet and stood on three spiked feet. It had a 19mm ScanSpeak D2008 tweeter and a 5-inch cast chassis Royd bass driver, which was the same driver used in the Royd Apex at the time. Soon after the Mark I came the Mark 1.25, which was, as far as I know, the same speaker as the Mark I, but with only a half-fluted cabinet. The fluting on the cabinet, by the way, served an acoustic purpose designed to help break up driver reflections. Later, the Mark 1.5 version appeared using the same cabinet, same three spiked feet, and same tweeter as previous models, but this time using Rega's new RR125 bass driver. This bass driver would subsequently be used in some iteration for the next decade and a half or so on all Rega models. You can easily spot the difference between the Royd and Rega drivers by the number of screws on the bezel. The Royd drivers have 8 screws while the Rega drivers have 4. And note that the screws are oriented in the north, south, west, east positions on the Mark 1.5, whereas bass drivers were rotated a quarter turn on subsequent models. The Rega drivers also have a phase plug at their center, while the Royds don't. In 1992, the next generation Ela was introduced, the Mark II XEL. The Mark II was also half-fluted, but had a slightly larger cabinet than the original model. This model stood on 4 spiked feet, rather than the previous version's 3 spiked feet. Although this made for more difficult leveling of the speaker if you were so inclined to doing so, it made the speakers less prone to tipping. This model retained the ScanSpeak D2008 tweeter and Rega's own RR125 bass driver. After the Mark II came the Mark 2.5, which, from what I've been able to determine, contained only a different tweeter than the previous models, this time a 25mm tweeter made by XELs of Norway. Other than that, I've not been able to determine any other differences between the Mark II and the Mark 2.5. If one of you people out there know anything different, please let me know. Now, in 1998, Rega introduced the Ela 2000, also known as the Mark III. This speaker was a departure from the previous model's slanted front baffle in that it had an upright box. Again, it used Rega's RR125 bass driver, and although I'm not 100% certain, I believe it used the same XELs tweeter as used in the Mark 2.5. Maybe one of you out there viewing can chime in on this too. The Ela 2000 was not as well received as previous models. Some listeners have stated that with each new iteration, the speaker became brighter and brighter, with the Ela 2000 being the brightest of all. I can't confirm or deny that statement though, since I've not owned that version. What I can tell you though is that my Mark II XEL was brighter than my current Mark 1.25s by a noticeable amount. If the Ela 2000 treble was even more up-tilted than the Mark IIs, I can understand why comments of the Elas being too bright have been thrown around. In terms of overall sound quality you can expect from the Elas, I can only speak to the models I've owned, the 125s and the Mark IIs. Now, both iterations of the Elas I've owned have very good to excellent imaging. They're both very transparent, with well-delineated placement of sound, giving the listener nice insight into the music. They both have a lean and lively and slightly untidy sound character. They both have a bit of a tilted up treble, I guess you could say, which is really a non-issue with my current Mark 1.25s, especially when paired with my Sugden amplifier. Their transmission line design affords them very smooth bass that goes much deeper than you might expect, but is limited in its outright precision and authority. Despite that, the speaker's usable frequency range comes together nicely in an exciting and entertaining manner, with a lean, natural sound and with an excellent 3D image. They're also fairly easy to place. You can get good sound without too much fiddling, although, of course, as with any speaker, they sound their best if you take the time to position them correctly. They also don't seem to require too much power to drive them. I've gotten very good results at the end of my Exposure 2010 and my Sugden A48B integrateds. Now, although more similar than different, the differences I observed between the Mark 1.25 with the Royd driver and the Mark II with the Rega driver were that the 125s are a bit less refined and a bit rougher sounding, with a bit less extended treble than the Mark II, although still fairly prominent. Although more refined, I found the Mark II's treble to be a bit too prominent at times back when I owned the speakers. The Roid driver in the Mark 1.25 is less transparent than the Rega driver in the Mark II, with the Mark II having a very see-through sound quality. The Mark II also has better imaging accuracy and a deeper soundstage, and it's more refined overall, but also more polite, despite the somewhat hot treble. On the other hand, the 125 feels more fun, more toe-tapping than the Mark II. Now, the Mark II had a much nicer finish than my current Mark 1.25s. They had a very nice black ash finish, whereas my current Elas are wrapped in a very ugly black vinyl. The Mark IIs were also more stable than my current 125s, but it's really a non-issue for me as I have no pets or kids in the house. I'd really love to own the Mark IIs once again, even if only to compare the two models directly. They were very good speakers. Now, that said, I think that's about all I've got for you on the Regas today. If you have anything to add, feel free to leave a comment below. And other than that, if you even remotely enjoyed this video, please give it a like and maybe even subscribe. And we'll see you here again next time. Bye for now.